welcome to Sustainability Forward, where we explore bold ideas, real solutions, and the people driving change for a better, greener future. I am Rishi, your host, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Carmine. Welcome, Carmine.
Rishi, great to be here today for a very interesting episode.
Absolutely, Carmine. We have been talking about climate change for a while. Many of our episodes have centered around that topic. But when we think of climate change, what usually comes to mind? Usually it's fossil fuels, cars, electricity, heavy emitters in the industry. But there's another major contributor that often flies under the radar, and that is our global food system. What do you think?
Yeah, good point, Richie. So food, agriculture, and broadly land use accounts something around 20 to 30% of all greenhouses emissions. And this goes from how we grow food to how we transport it, how to deal with waste. So our food systems are shaping the future of the planet in the ways we rarely talk about.
Yeah, but there's a silver lining here. The hopeful part is that the way we feed the world doesn't just have to be the part of the problem. It can also be part of the solution. According to Drawdown Food, there are two powerful levers in this area. One is cutting emissions, and the other is healing the land through better soil health and ecosystem restoration.
And this brings to a question that is probably the base of this episode. Is there a way to eat food that heals the planet? So today we have a guest to talk about it, and she will tell us a little bit more about this, one loaf at a time. So we have today Maddie Hamann. She's the co-founder, director of marketing at PACHA Bread, where she applies her extensive scientific background to drive the company's mission of promoting regenerative agriculture and sustainability. Maddie holds a PhD from the Street Institution of Oceanography, but she transitioned from the field of earth science to marketing in order to make a direct impact on climate change through business. Her dedication to environmental sustainability is at the heart of PACHA marketing strategies, ensuring that the company's values are reflected in every aspect of the brand. So Maddie, welcome to the show.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Maddie, Carmen has given us a quick view of your career, your bio, but we are obviously a very curious bunch. So we'd like to know how you went from being an earth science PhD to sustainable entrepreneurship, and how sustainability became central to that life and career.
Yeah. Well, I would say actually that the sustainability being central to my life and career is kind of what drove the shift. I don't know, my parents, I think it started with them. They always composted. My dad's an avid gardener, and we spent time out in nature, walking through the woods and just enjoying the natural beauty of the earth. And a lot of my academic career when I was young was driven more by like, okay, I'm really good at math and science, and like not everybody is, so I should put my skills to good use. Like I've been given that gift, so I should use it for, making life better for everyone. And that drove me to, first I got a PhD, or sorry, I got my bachelor's degree in civil engineering. And then kind of in my studies of civil engineering, I was realizing like how much of the just construction, how much of an issue the materials that we use are. And I started to learn more about that. And I also learned about fluid mechanics. And when I graduated, I had learned about the field of oceanography, and I thought, wow, okay, so I must, if I like if we're going to do something about climate change, we must need to understand the problem better. And so I want to be a part of that. Like, I want to go and use my math and science skills to understand and help humanity steer the ship through what's coming. And I had an amazing time in grad school. It was super interesting to learn about the physics of the ocean and other aspects of oceanography as well. But in my studies, I realized, like, wow, we know a lot. And there's a lot we don't know, but we certainly know enough to start making some changes in the way that we are living and the way we are providing goods to the growing population on Earth. And yeah, it just seemed to me that knowledge wasn't the thing that was going to drive those changes. And even just a couple of years into my degree, I had the feeling that I would shift somewhat, not to being just like a straight researcher, but maybe being more in like the science communications, or being at the intersection of art and science, or some piece that would start like engaging with the populace. And then about a year before I finished my PhD, I met my partner, Adam Heiner. He is a serial entrepreneur, and now we joke that he's a pseudo serial entrepreneur. That's a bad joke. Buckwheat is a pseudo serial. um, but he has owned and operated multiple businesses, and at the time, he was involved with his most recent company, which is called Boochcraft. It's a hard kombucha. It's pretty well known out here in California, but it's probably not global. And he was basically working with their farmers, and his role he had kind of like hired himself out of all of the other positions that he had worked for the company. Somebody else was doing that stuff. And so he was focusing on doing the impact and using Boochcraft's dollars to find better ways of sourcing the ingredients and working with farmers to improve their farming methods. And I started learning about regenerative agriculture, which is what we're going to talk about, I think, today. And
Let's have
I,
this probably, Maddie.
yeah,
What is regenerative agriculture? Help us to understand a little bit more about it.
Yeah. So essentially, at the heart of it, regenerative agriculture is agriculture that cares for the health of the soil. And there's a few different aspects that really make regenerative agriculture what it is. But essentially, when you take care of the soil, you have a healthy, thriving. I mean, everybody knows the difference, right, between a handful of dirt, just like, stuff that just blows away in the wind, versus soil, like black, moist, like just stuff that you're like, oh yeah, that's good. That's going to make a good tomato. And I say that maybe not everybody knows that difference, but it's yeah. The black soil, what the difference is that it has a whole ecosystem living inside of it. There's, from all the levels, microorganisms, worms, nematodes, like lots of different creatures that are actually carbon-based life forms that that build this ecosystem that has air and water. And what happens when your soil is really healthy is that, one, like the plants are really healthy. There is a balance in the ecosystem, the soil ecosystem, and the ecosystem that includes the plants and the pollinators and the different things that contribute to the ecosystem. There's a balance that allows for resilience. So pests tend to not be able to take over, because there's the pest, but then there's also the thing that eats the pest. So you have much smaller issues with disease in your crops. And the water is able to penetrate in the soil. So it's like a sponge, right? If you can imagine like taking a handful of dirt and pouring water on it, like the water is just going to like wash the dirt away. versus if you have a handful of soil and you pour water on it, the water soaks into the soil. And
This
that's
is
what happens when you have healthy soil on your farm. So
and
you can
it's
use
an
water
example
more
that
effectively. It prevents flooding, or diminishes flooding, which is a big issue out here in California and in different places in the world. Yeah, and then also there's a balance that includes animals and animals that fertilize the soil with their manure. And yeah, there's a lot of pieces that go into it, but essentially it's like it's a healthy ecosystem that supports the soil and makes sure that the soil is really healthy.
but it's healthy for the soil. It becomes carbon sequestration also medium. If our diversity, biodiversity yields the nutrients of the food. So there is a
Yeah.
lot of good effects. So probably this is why it matters to talk about
Yeah.
regenerative agriculture. And I love your example of the way of putting water on it. Something that we see during summer, for example, in this part of the world in Europe, where we have 2-3 months of no rain, is when we go to September and heavy rain starts, all the rain flushes away. It's not absorbed in the ground, in the soil. And this is one of the reasons, because the soil cannot keep that amount of water all of a sudden anymore. So let's talk then on the patch approach and why it belongs to this regenerative agriculture. So what are you doing in this kind of space?
Yeah. So kind of wrapping up that story, I after seeing my partner doing what he was doing with Boochcraft, he was thinking of, so we were making this buckwheat bread, and we had been making it for a couple of years, and it's delicious. It's gluten-free. It's made with just a few simple ingredients, and it feels like really nourishing in your body. And he wanted to turn that into, like, he wanted to give people access to this bread, which is life-changing if you're, if you're not able to eat gluten or some of the additives that get put into bread. It's like, oh my gosh, I can eat this. Two ingredients, are you kidding me? And so he wanted to start a business with it. And for me, I just realized that we had an opportunity to use business to transform acreage, like to grow buckwheat specifically for the purpose of making our bread and to help farmers implement regenerative practices on their land. So buckwheat it's kind of inherently a regenerative crop. It's used, so there's actually like a lot of buckwheat farming. A lot of buckwheat is grown in the United States, but not much of it is farmed, in the sense that it's not harvested because it's used as a cover crop. So they'll plant it in between crop rotations just to have roots in the soil and to keep that soil from blowing away in the wind. Like they just want to keep the soil healthy. And most of the time right after the buckwheat flowers, they'll till it back into the soil so that it fixes nitrogen. And then they'll plant something else. But you can actually harvest the buckwheat as well. And one of the really nice things about that is it's usually an additional crop for the farmer because it has a short grow season. They can often kind of slot it in between their spring and their fall crops, and they're able to have a third rotation of crops and get the benefit of the buckwheat. It's not wheat. First of all, it's this really beautiful plant. It has like these little white flowers and sort of broader leaves, and it just sprawls out all over the field, and it attracts a multitude of different pollinators. There's like all kinds of beetles and different bugs that come to pollinate the buckwheat, and it fixes nitrogen, and it just is like, it in and of itself is so good for the soil, even if you grow it on a conventional farm. But we go a step beyond that. We're certified regenerative through an organization called the Soil and Climate Initiative. And essentially what we do is for every acre of buckwheat that we contract for the year, like we say, okay, we're going to need 1,200 acres of buckwheat this year. And for every acre that we contract, we pay a fee that goes to the farmers to help them actually transition into regenerative methods. So yeah, our business is like the more bread we sell, the more acres of regenerative farm are created in the country.
It's
Yeah.
very, very interesting. Like you said in your joke earlier, buckwheat is a pseudo cereal. Right? So
Yeah.
it doesn't grow on the tip of a grass like most cereals, right? That's the
Yeah.
interest. But it's used like a cereal.
Yes, exactly.
And that's why it's a pseudo cereal. Now, so this is kind of the front end of PACHA, I guess, regenerative agriculture, where the ingredients come from. Let's maybe look at the packaging side and your contribution to the zero waste mission, right? Here in Europe, there is the sustainability movement is at its peak. That's what we feel like, right? When we go buy bread in a local market, of course, the focus is on on the taste, the ingredients, but also on the packaging, right? It's typically wrapped in a piece of paper, and that's it. No plastics. Usually,
Yeah.
from a supermarket, that's a different question, but usually you just get the loaf wrapped in a piece of paper. That's it, right? Tell us a little bit about what you are doing with respect to, innovative compostable packaging, things like that.
Yeah. So again, like our company, we founded it, we started it because we want to be doing business in a different and better way than we see happening here in America. And so from the beginning, we've committed to having fully home compostable film. And yeah, so all of our bread comes in a home compostable film bag that's made from potato starch. And it can break down in a home compost in like 90 to 120 days, depending on how good you are at composting. Um, and then the closures, the little clip that keeps the bag shut is actually made of cardboard instead of the plastic that you typically see on a bread package. And yeah, we've estimated that we've saved like 18,000 pounds of plastic from going into production since we founded the company, which is crazy to think about.
Well, when was that, Maddie? When did you found your company?
We started in 2020, right? Like
Oh,
right when the pandemic was
yeah, yeah.
kicking
Okay,
off.
got it.
It was fun stuff. But yeah, we've sold a little over 500,000 loaves of bread since then.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
And with the compostable packaging, it's a challenging space. The plastic just performs in a certain way that's very hard to mimic with something that will break down, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Like we would love to sell our bread in paper, but we can't because of the way that we are selling, like because we're selling into supermarkets and in the frozen section. It's just a different model. It's not like the local bakery model of things.
yeah,
But a lot of products that would like to use compostable film, um, it's really hard to get a barrier layer. So there's like oxygen can exchange.
yeah,
But because our product is frozen and it kind of stands up well to fluctuations in temperature, like you can freeze it and thaw it a couple times and it's totally fine. Not every product's like that, but then also compostable options are so much more expensive than the petroleum-based plastics. And I think that's something that a lot of companies run into is they start off and they're like, okay, well, we don't have the money right now to pay for compostable options, but once we hit this certain mark, once we get here, we'll start using compostable. But like, you never get there. Like, you never get to a point with your company where you're like, oh, we just have lots of extra money. Not never, but
One
it
day,
takes a
one day.
long time. And so it just to transition to a package that's 4 or 5 times more expensive than the petroleum-based alternative is a big pill for most companies to swallow. So we just built it into the company's DNA from the beginning.
Yeah.
Actually, Maddie, this brings me to a question. So, talking about food, I think you need to balance, as you said, a few components. So, yes, to be secure, yes, to be accessible, yes, to be sustainable, and still has to build your business case. How are you balancing all of these elements? Remaining true to your missions and what you're trying to achieve here.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting question. So I would say that like the best answer that I can give you right now is that our company was founded and invested in by people who align with our mission. And so we haven't taken on large investment from a VC or a larger food holding company or just a shareholder that would encourage us to focus more on profitability and less on our mission. So yeah, that's really probably the best answer that I can give you. And also just Adam and I are still running the company. Things can change when new leadership steps in or when a player comes to the table with misaligned goals. Yeah.
And another question, Matt, is how you can reach scale with this, or is it feasible to reach scale considering the resources you need, also natural resources? So with your raw materials,
Yeah.
how much can you scale? How quickly can you scale? Is if you really want to democratize this bread.
So right now, there's no issue in sourcing the materials that we need to get to the scale of profitability. It is a sizable. You have to do quite a bit of business. Like I think we'll be profitable when we're in something like 2,000 or 2,500 doors, and we're in about a little over 1,000 right now. Maybe a little bit more than that. I haven't checked those numbers recently. It's a sales side. So, double what we're doing right now. The sourcing buckwheat is definitely going to be a challenge, and it is certainly possible that there will be a time when we're like doubling growth and we're, 3 or 4 times as large as we are right now, when we won't be able to scale the regenerative side of things in a single year. But what's really encouraging is that we have that this crop is actually a lot of farmers would love to be growing buckwheat, and the problem is that there's not much of a market for buckwheat in the United States. Like in other countries in Asia, buckwheat and Russia, buckwheat is a staple. People eat buckwheat and they know about it, they want it, there's a demand, so people grow it. So as we expand the market here in the States, it actually is enabling farmers to grow something they would like to be growing. And the other piece that is really working in our favor is that we actually work with one of our farmers. His name's John Strophus, and he owns a food, what do you call that? It's like an ingredients company. And he actually goes out and talks to the farmers in his network and says, "Hey, I need to grow more buckwheat for my client PACHA, and if you want to jump on, all you have to do is get certified through this regenerative certification." Now, it is kind of a big ask for a farmer to do things differently than he's done. Then, like most of the farmers, this is the way my dad taught me how to do it, and this is the way that his dad did it before him, I think. Like, It's for someone outside of their industry to come in and say, hey, I think you should start growing your food regeneratively. Like, I'll buy your buckwheat from you if you grow it regeneratively. And they're like, uh, why? Like, that sounds like a lot of work. I don't want to do that. But we have on our side, on our team, we've got a really passionate farmer who speaks their language, and he says, hey, you should do this. And like, here's all the reasons why. And the main one being that it's going to be better for your health. It's going to be better for your profitability. You're going to be able to sell this product and reduce the amount of money you spend on chemical fertilizers and pesticides. And like, this is going to be better for you. And I've done it. And here's my track record, and I can help you. So that's a totally different conversation than someone coming in and just being like, hey, regenerative agriculture, you should do it. And yeah, actually, that's one piece that we didn't discuss when we were talking about regenerative agriculture. So one of the primary goals of regenerative agriculture is to reduce and eventually eliminate all synthetic inputs. So any kind of pesticide, any kind of fertilizer that's made out of petroleum, which, by the way, in case you didn't know, all of these things are made out of petroleum. Um, so, and a lot of like the pattern that happens in the food system is that um, the chemical companies are saying like, okay, here's the formula, here's the oh my gosh, what is Roundup? Here's the herbicide that you'll need to get the best yields out of these crops. And so here's your fertilizer, here's your pesticides, and this is how you'll maximize your yields. And you do that for a few seasons, and then you see the results and you're like, okay, I got to keep doing this. Meanwhile, the soil is being depleted every year, and you need more fertilizer every year to make the same yield that you made the year prior. And so they're just like, they're getting sucked into this loop. It's hard to see the way out of it. But what regenerative agriculture does is it eliminates the need for those synthetics, and then farmers don't have to spend so much money to grow their crops, and they can be more profitable. It's like the whole system, the regenerative agriculture supports the entire system. Everyone who's involved, from the smallest levels up to the the farmers who are holding the large plots of land, like everyone can benefit from it, except for maybe the big chemical companies who want to sell their petroleum fertilizers.
Maddie, maybe it's a good time to ask where can people find your bread?
So we're in the US. You can buy our bread directly from our website, livepacha.com. And you can also find us nationwide at Whole Foods. And then we're in a few other chains that are regional. Natural Grocers carries our products. New Seasons, Gelson's, Erewhon, some smaller chains. If you would like to buy our bread at a store, you can go onto our website and look at our store locator to find a location near you.
Next time we're in the US, we'll go to Whole Foods to get your bread. So where do you go from here? What's the vision in terms of the company? Where do you think regenerative and sustainable food business is going? If you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, gosh, there's definitely a movement of regenerative food happening right now. It's not as so like regenerative is still not a term that most consumers are familiar with. And it's not a term that helps sell a product at the moment, unfortunately, because people don't know about it. They're not willing to pay a premium price for a product that has regenerative ingredients. But if you go to the food expos, like if Expo West, which is one of the biggest consumer packaged goods shows in the world, there's, people are talking about it. There's panels, there are groupings of companies that are working together. There are certifications that are emerging. It feels very much like the food industry is realizing this is where it's going and starting to pay attention. PACHA is a member of a coalition called the Regen Brands Coalition. It just started this year, but it's a group of about 40 brands that are all that all have at least one certified regenerative product. And what we're really working on is like, okay, how do we collectively as brands, how do we amplify our voice? How do we get through to the people who make decisions about what goes onto the grocery shelf? Like, how do we communicate with them about the importance of regenerative? One of the other really cool things that we have seen in our journey is that there are with Whole Foods, for example, they really care. Like they're very strict about their use of the word regenerative. And if you're not actually regenerative, they're not going to let you put it on your package and sell it at a Whole Foods store. And then also, we went from having no distribution in Whole Foods to being a nationwide brand. And that's not a common occurrence. It does happen, but many brands start in one or two regions. They're just in Southern California, or they're just in the Northeast or whatever. But really, like, in the conversation that we had with our buyer, the one who decides what goes on the frozen bread shelf, I'm pretty sure she picked us up because our packaging is compostable. Like, she was like, this is a bread brand who's doing something that I've heard other brands say they can't do. All right, let's bring them in. Like, let's let these other brands see what can be done and hopefully follow in their footsteps. So there's there's really good traction, and there's also a lot of work to be done. Yeah. Like, no, in the United States, 1% of farmland is certified organic. And that's not regenerative. That's just organic. You can still use like certain organic pesticides and fertilizers and whatnot on those fields. Yeah. And so one of the things that's kind of a TBD within the regenerative space is figuring out whether the definition of regenerative agriculture will say that you must be organic before you can be regenerative. And I don't know where that's going to land. There's a good argument both ways. On one side, yeah, it really feels like if something is regenerative, you shouldn't be putting synthetic pesticides on it, right? Like,
yeah,
Roundup and regenerative, just like, that doesn't seem like they go in the same sentence. However, if we want to fully utilize regenerative agriculture for the climate, for the climate change buffering that it can provide, we can't just start transitioning the 1% of farmland. We need to be transitioning the 99%, which is still conventionally farmed. So that one, I don't know how to answer like the trajectory in that sense. But I think like it's going to take 5 years at least for the term regenerative to really permeate the consumer awareness in a way that makes it like, okay, I'm going to put that on my package, on the front of my package, because it's going to get a consumer's attention. I think that's at least 5 years away. But I see that happening. And I definitely see more brands and investors and people who are aware that our food system is not, it's estimated that we have something like 60 harvests left on a lot of the conventionally farmed land across the world. Like, that's like 30 years. If we keep farming the land in the way we're doing it, we're going to lose all of our topsoil. It's just going to blow, like, we're going to have another dust bowl on our hands. It's just going to blow away.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. It's crazy. but it also doesn't have to happen, and you can quite rapidly actually improve the the soil quality. And I don't think we've said this directly in this conversation. We've kind of danced around it, but when the soil is healthy, like I said, it's got all these carbon-based life forms in it. Soil is a huge carbon sink. It has more carbon sink potential than growing trees. Like reforestation is not as good as building topsoil over the amount of land that we have transitioned to farmland. It's a better solution,
Yeah.
which is really cool. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is a topic where there are probably multiple opinions on where the industry is going, where the practice is going, whether it's really doing what it's claiming to be doing. But it's very, very good to see that a brand like yours is making a difference. It is being recognized by organizations like Whole Foods, and for doing all the right things, right? And it creates a healthy challenge. Maddie, this has been a very insightful episode for us, particularly because you started a brand in 2020. You've come all the way, sold more than 500,000 units, and still there is a huge growth trajectory in front of you, and all the while doing the right things for the environment and for your consumers. So thank you for sharing all your experience and your journey with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. To our audience, thanks for listening to Sustainability Forward. If you found today's episode valuable, please subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who cares about the future, about sustainability. Until next time, keep pushing sustainability forward.